Hello and welcome to my channel. So a few days ago I posted a video on how to turn your old jeans into yarn like this, and now today I'm going to show you how to turn this yarn into a bag like this. The fun thing about this bag is you can really customize it. You can make it any size that you want. You can make the strap as long as you want. I added this little scarf for a little pop of color. We also have some white jeans in here for a little more color as well. So there are so many different ways you can customize this to really make your own style out of this bag. But for this tutorial, you are going to need denim yarn like I've already showed you. So if you don't have this already, I will link the video down below and I'll also put it right up there for how to turn jeans into yarn. So go ahead and watch that video and make some yarn like this before coming back to this video to then make this bag. So now let's go ahead and jump into the tutorial for this denim crochet bag made out of recycled jeans. For this tutorial, I will of course be using denim yarn. I end up using about 5 skeins of yarn for one bag, which equals 2.5 pairs of jeans, but it really depends on how big the jeans are you are cutting and how much yarn you're able to get from each pants leg, but in average it takes about 2.5 pairs of jeans to make one of these bags. And then I will also be using a 6mm crochet hook, and then this part is optional, but I think it just looks so pretty. I am also using some wooden rings here that I got from Hobby Lobby. These are 1.89 inches, or if you don't like the wooden rings, you could also get steel rings. They both do the same thing. It just depends on what sort of elements you like better with the bag. So for my bag here, I'm going to be using the wooden rings, but we don't need those for right now. Right now, all we need is our crochet hook and our first skein of denim yarn. So I'm going to start by making a slip knot, and the key to working with this yarn, because it is so tough to work with, is you always want to have very loose tension, and every time you complete a stitch, I recommend kind of giving the yarn a little tug to make that loop bigger. It's going to be much bigger than your actual hook size here, which is perfect. Otherwise, it's really tricky to pull the yarn through the loop on your hook, so you want to kind of give it a tug to make that loop pretty big. So we're going to start by making the chain for the bottom of the bag. For my bag, I'm going to chain 14, which gives me a pretty big purse size. You can definitely chain more or less, but for this bag here, we're going to chain 14. So I'm going to start by making a chain of 14. And again, whenever I pull that yarn through, I'm just going to kind of tug the loop a little bit to make that loop on my hook even bigger, especially when we get to these parts here where we have sort of that seam of the jeans. That can get quite tricky to pull through the loop. So you just want to make sure those loops are pretty big, and you might have to kind of guide it through. But it takes a little bit of time, but you'll get used to it after a little bit. So the main thing is you just want to make sure the loops are nice and big so that your yarn can actually fit through it. Okay, so here I have my chain 14, which is going to be the bottom of the bag, and we are going to make it a little bit wider and a little bit longer. So when you're making your chain for the length of your bag, you want to kind of underestimate here because we will be growing the chain just a little bit. So now let's go ahead and make sort of the base of the bag. So I'm going to start by chaining 1 to act as a turning chain. Gotta pull that loop like so. And now into the first chain after that chain 1, I'm just going to go ahead and place a single crochet. So again, as I'm doing these single crochets, I'm keeping all of the loops on my hook as loose as possible because this yarn is quite dense. And I'm going to go ahead and just place these single crochets all the way down this entire row here. So in every single one of these chain stitches, I am placing a single crochet stitch until I reach that very last stitch at the end of the chain. So all of these stitches here, I am placing single crochet stitches into. Again, I'm keeping my tension very loose, and I'm kind of guiding the yarn through with my finger and pulling the loops extra tall to make it easier to work with. I have now completed 1 row of single crochet all the way down here with just 1 stitch left at the end of the chain. And now into this last stitch of the row, we're going to go ahead and place 3 single crochets. So I'm going to start with my 1 normal single crochet into this last stitch here. And now I'm going to insert my hook into the exact same stitch, pick up some of that yarn, and then place another single crochet into that exact same stitch. So that is 2 single crochets completed. So now one last time, I'm going to insert my hook into that exact same stitch, pick up some yarn, and complete a 3rd single crochet into that same exact stitch. like so. And now I'm going to go ahead and mark the first of those 3 stitches, so that way I remember when I'm coming back around where we started this little increase here at the end of the row. So starting with the stitch that we just completed, that's 1, 2, and 3, and now into that 3rd stitch I'm just inserting a smaller hook here, that way I can pull a little bit of yarn through. This is how I'm going to mark my stitch, just because I can't fit any stitch marker through this stitch here. So I'm actually just going to pull a little bit of colored yarn right through that stitch and then tie a loose little knot here. So I remember that this is the first stitch of the increase, like so. And now because this yarn is so bulky, placing those 3 stitches into the end stitch there should have almost brought you over to the other side. So if you were to flip your project over like this, you're basically now working on the back side here, and those 3 stitches should have kind of helped your hook go up and around, so you're now ready to work on the back side. So we're now going to work in this side of the chain and work our way right back to the start of the row here. So we're making sort of an oval for the bottom of the bag. So I am working into the back or the other side of the chain here. So now into this first stitch at the back of the chain, I'm inserting my hook, picking up that yarn like so, and then placing a single crochet like so. And I'm just going to repeat that same process that we did on the way down, where I'm just going into every single one of these chain stitches, again working right into the back loop of the chain or the opposite side of the chain, and I'm going to keep going until I reach that very last stitch there at the start or the end of the chain, whichever way you want to look at it. I have now worked my way all the way down here with just 1 stitch remaining. So now into this last stitch, we're going to go ahead and place just 2 single crochets. So I'm inserting my hook into that last stitch, and I'm going to start with just 1 single crochet like so, and I'm pulling that loop nice and tall so I can then do another single crochet. I'm going to insert my hook into that exact same stitch and then complete a second single crochet like so. And now I want to go ahead and mark the first of those 2 single crochets so I remember where it is when I come back. So here's the stitch we just did, and then the stitch right before that would be the first of those 2. So I'm inserting my little hook so I can then pick up a little color of yarn, and then I'm just going to pull that scrap yarn right through and then tie it onto that stitch so I remember that this is our marked stitch where we want to do the increase in the 2nd row. And now all I'm going to do to complete this first row is kind of rotate my work like so, find that very first stitch that we did on that row. I'm then going to insert my hook into that first stitch that we did on the row, and I'm going to pick up some yarn, pull it through that stitch, and then I'm going to pull that yarn also through the loop on my hook, therefore completing a slip stitch. So that is our very first row completed for the bottom of the bag, and we're just going to do 1 more row here with the increases to get the width of the bottom of the bag before we then start working our way up for the sides. So let's do 1 more row here with the increases. So for this next row, I'm going to insert my hook into the exact same stitch that we just slip stitched into. So this exact same stitch here, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start with 2 single crochets in this stitch. So I've inserted my hook into the exact same stitch, and I'm going to place 1 single crochet like so, and then I'm going to insert my hook into that exact same stitch again to place a second single crochet like so. So we should have 2 single crochets in that first stitch of the row, and now we're going to go ahead and just place a single crochet stitch into every single one of the single crochet stitches we've already done. So I'm going to place 1 stitch into all of these stitches all the way down until I reach the stitch that we have marked here. So into all of these stitches up until that first marked stitch, I'm just going to place 1 single crochet stitch. I have now placed a single crochet stitch into all of these stitches down here up until this stitch here that we have our little marker. So I'm going to go ahead and untie this yarn, and now into this stitch that we had marked, I'm going to go ahead and place 2 single crochets. So I'm going to insert my hook right into that stitch that we had marked, pick up some yarn, and place the first single crochet like so, and then I'm going to reinsert my hook into that exact same stitch, and then place one more single crochet. So in total we will have 2 single crochets in this one stitch. And now I'm going to go into the next stitch here, and now into this stitch I'm just going to place 1 single crochet. So we're just doing 1 normal stitch like so. And then into the next stitch, which should be the 3rd stitch of the increases that we did in that first row. So this was 1, 2, 3 for those 3 increases. So into that 3rd stitch, or the next stitch here, I'm going to insert my hook. And now into this stitch, we're going to do another 2 single crochets. So I'm going to start with 1 single crochet stitch. And then I'm going to reinsert my hook into that exact same stitch, pick up some yarn, and then complete another single crochet. Oops. Like so. So we should have an increase, a normal stitch, and then an increase. So 2, 1, and 2 right along the bottom or the edge here of the bag. And now we're going to go ahead and work our way up to the next stitch here that we have marked. So now we're just going to continue like normal, and into every single one of these stitches here I'm going to place a single crochet. So into all of these single crochet stitches up until I reach the one I have marked with this little string, I'm just going to be placing single crochets all the way up to that stitch. So now you can see there that I have done those single crochet stitches all the way across up to this stitch here that we have marked, which is our next stitch. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that stitch marker. Like so. And now into that next stitch, which is the one that we just had marked, we're going to place 2 single crochets. So I'm inserting my hook right into that stitch, and I'm going to start with just 1 normal single crochet. Like so, and then I'm going to reinsert my hook into that exact same stitch, and then I'm going to place that 2nd single crochet, and then into the next stitch we're going to just place 1 single crochet. And because we started the row with an increase of 2, we're just ending this row with just 1 stitch, because then all together that will make our increased normal stitch increase like on the other side, so our 2, 1, 2 stitches like we did on the other side. So here I have that normal stitch, and now I'm going to go ahead and insert my hook into that very first stitch that we did for the row, and then I'm going to slip stitch again. So I'm picking up my yarn, pulling it through that stitch, and then also pulling it through the loop on my hook, therefore completing a slip stitch. So now all together here we have the bottom of the bag. It definitely is a little bit tricky to get the bottom started, but once this is completed, it's going to be a lot easier now. So you should have sort of an oval like this, 2 rounded sides, and then just 1 nice flat bottom. It's okay if it curls up a little bit, but it should be generally pretty flat. And now we're just going to go ahead and just work on building up the sides of the bag, which is very self-explanatory. All you're going to do is just continue placing single crochets into all of these stitches with no increases. You're just going to go all the way around, single crochet into every single stitch, around and around and around until you're happy with the height of the bag. So I am just going to go ahead and work on this off camera because it is quite self-explanatory. I'm just placing a single crochet stitch into every single stitch all the way around, and I'm going to continue doing that for several rows until I'm happy with the height of the bag. So just single crochet around and around and around until the bag is the height that you want, and then I will come back once I have completed that so we can add the strap and the little accessories to the side of the bag. So just go ahead and keep doing rows here of just plain single crochet until you are happy with the height of the bag. I also wanted to show you quickly how to go about switching skeins of yarn once you've completed a skein, because it can be a little bit different than when we normally switch skeins of yarn with just standard like weight 4 yarn. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this yarn right through the slip stitch that I made, like so, therefore casting off. So there's 2 different ways you can do this. I have my preferred method, but I will show you both ways. So the first way is you just get your next skein of yarn here, and you just go ahead and tie a knot. Like so. And there's 2 different ways you can tie a knot. So the first way is you just tie the 2 together like so, and you'd pull it really tight, and then you just keep crocheting and you crochet that knot right into the bag, and the knot will pop out, you will see it, so you have to be okay with that. Or the other way you can do it is by lying both strands out like so, and then taking the end of one strand. I'm going to go ahead and do that same kind of knot, but just with one strand like so, and then I'm going to go over to the other side and tie that same knot with the other strand on this side, like so. And then you're just going to pull both knots together, like so. So here we have those two knots now right next to each other, and the more you pull it, the tighter it gets, so it won't come undone as easily, and it's also a lot flatter than the other knot, so it'll work into your crochet a lot easier. So I would definitely recommend this one if you're going the route of just tying the yarn together. But what I prefer to do, because in my opinion it looks better and it's also much more secure, is instead of tying any knots here, I just went ahead and cast it off with this yarn. So I pulled it right through a slip stitch and then gave it a little tug to lock it in place. And now I'm just going to leave this yarn like so, and I'm going to reinsert my hook into that exact same stitch I just cast it off from, like so. And then I'm going to get my new yarn and bring it through like so. And then I'm going to just begin crocheting with the new yarn. So we're going to have this loose end, or this tail of this yarn here, which in most of my crochet projects I do end up leaving a tail, which I then weave in. And I am definitely going to weave this in, but because denim yarn is so tough, it's going to be really tricky to weave it in. So after I'm done crocheting, I'm going to go back with a needle and some thread, some really fine sewing thread, and I'm just going to kind of sew the loose end right into the project to make sure it doesn't come undone. And even if you are attaching these with knots like I demonstrated before, I would still recommend going back in with a needle and some thread and just sewing any little loose ends in just to make sure it doesn't come undone. I have now worked my way all the way up to the height that I want for this bag, and I am now working on my 4th skein of yarn here. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to add the handles, and you can just attach the handles right to the bag. You can complete the bag, cut the yarn, and then add the handles. But I think it's really fun to add a little extra element to this bag, which I will be doing with these wooden circles as I showed you in the beginning of the video, or you can use metal circles depending on what material you prefer. But I have these 2 little wooden circles that we're going to place on either side of the bag. So here I have started up on this next row of the bag, and I am just right at the corner here where I have 2 stitches at the corner that I want to use to attach the circle. So right into these 2 stitches here, I'm going to be attaching this circle. So I'm going to start by just inserting my hook right into that first stitch, like so, and then I'm going to take the wooden circle and I'm going to place it on top of my hook as well, and then I'm going to pick up my yarn and I'm going to pull it through the circle and then also through the stitch, like so, and then just complete a single crochet stitch like normal. And then I'm also going to secure it with another stitch just to make sure it's really locked in place. So I'm going to insert my hook into the exact same stitch like so. And then I'm also going to insert my hook right through that wooden circle before I then pick up my yarn, pull it through the wooden circle, and then pull it through the stitch to then go ahead and complete a single crochet stitch. So I have 2 single crochet stitches here attaching this wooden ring right to the bag, and this is going to become our handle, or the part that attaches the handle. So now I am just going to continue on like normal and just place these single crochet stitches into every single stitch like we were doing before. So I'm just going to go ahead and place single crochet stitches into every single stitch here across to the next corner or side of the bag, and then once I reach that stitch right on the edge of the bag here, we're going to go ahead and add the second wooden ring. So I'm just going to work my way all the way down until I reach that corner of the bag there with just more single crochets. So I have now worked my way all the way across here with all single crochet stitches, and we're now to that 1 stitch at the corner. So we're going to go ahead and add the next little wooden circle. So I'm going to insert my hook right into that next stitch, like so. And then I'm going to get my wooden circle and I'm going to place it right on top of that hook as well, before then scooping up the yarn, pulling it through both the circle and the stitch like so, and completing a single crochet like so. So there's that circle now attached to the bag, and we're going to make sure it's really secure. So I'm going to do a second single crochet. So I'm inserting my hook into that exact same stitch and then also right through that wooden circle again. And then I'm going to pick up the yarn and pull it through both the circle and the stitch, and then complete a second single crochet like so. So now you should have a wooden ring on both sides of the bag here. So now I'm going to go ahead and just finish up the rest of this row with single crochet stitches, and then we're going to cast off and add the strap. And now at the end of the row here, I am just slip stitching back down to the start of the project, and then I'm going to go ahead and cast off. So I'm going to just cut my yarn, and I'm leaving quite a bit of a tail here so we can attach this later. So I'm just going to cut my yarn right here, and then I'm going to tug on that yarn until it pops right through the stitch and give it an extra tug to lock it in place. So now we're going to go ahead and attach the strap, but first I'm going to turn the bag right side out because I currently have it inside out. You can see all the loose ends are here, so I'm just going to make sure I have it turned right side out. So now as you can see, the bag is now right side out. We have all the loose ends in there, and we have our little wooden rings on either side of the bag. So now I'm going to go ahead and make the strap for the bag, which is really easy. I'm just going to start on the side here, and I'm going to insert my hook right through that wooden circle, and I'm going to pick up my yarn that I want to use, which I'm going to use this sort of darker denim, and I'm going to go ahead and cast on by just pulling that yarn right through like so. And now I'm just going to chain the length that I want the strap to be. So I went ahead and did a chain of 40, which to me is the perfect length for a strap. So now I'm going to go ahead and attach it to the other side here. So I'm going to insert my hook through the ring on this side, pick up some yarn and slip stitch like so. And now if you wanted to, you could just cast off and leave it here, but I'm going to go ahead and do another row back because I want the strap to be pretty thick and durable. So I'm going to go ahead and just chain 1 like so, and then I'm going to insert my hook into the first chain stitch there and then complete a single crochet, and then into the next chain stitch to complete another single crochet. And I'm going to repeat this all the way across the entire chain stitch, so I'm just doing one row here of single crochet stitches. So I'm just going to go all the way across all of these chain stitches over to the other side and then slip stitch back into this ring just to make the strap a little bit thicker. And again, this is completely optional. You can just leave it as a plain chain, but I thought it would look nicer if I had a bit more durability to the strap. So I'm just going to go ahead and do an entire row here of single crochet. I've now completed that entire row of single crochet across the strap there, and then I slip stitched right back onto that wooden circle. So I'm then just going to cut my yarn like so, and then I'm just going to pull the yarn right through this stitch to therefore cast off. So there is our completed denim bag, and as I kind of mentioned before when I was showing you how to switch colors, with all these loose ends here, because the yarn is so tough, instead of actually weaving it into the project as you would with normal loose ends, I recommend taking a little bit of string like this and then just a simple sewing needle, and instead just kind of sewing this into the project. That way it doesn't come undone. So that's what I'm going to do now, is I'm going to take all of these loose ends here and then along the strap here, and I'm just going to lightly weave them in to the best of my ability and then sew the end down with just a little bit of string and a needle. And that's all you have to do to then complete this bag here. So here is what my bag ended up looking like. Very cute. It's just a little shoulder bag like this, and then I added the scarf for a little extra pop of color. I really hope that you liked this tutorial and that you found it to be helpful. I think it's really fun to try crocheting with different materials like denim or other thrifted things like t-shirt yarn. Any of that stuff is such a fun thing to get into. If you enjoyed this tutorial, make sure you like it. If you like crochet, then feel free to subscribe. I have a bunch of crochet tutorials here on my channel. And if you wanted to share with me your finished product, I would love to see it. You can do so by either tagging me in a picture that you post or just send me a picture to my Instagram DMs. I'm really excited to see what kind of bag you ended up making with your yarn. Otherwise, I will see you again very soon with another crochet video. Until then, I hope you have a wonderful and blessed couple of days. Goodbye.